All right. So last presentation of the day. How's it going so far? Good? All right. Let's be real honest. You ready? How many of you guys would rather just skip this and go find those mythical Google self-massaging chairs for the next hour? Raise your hands. All right. So everybody else is just very comfortable lying in a public setting. Got it. Okay. All right. So we've got one more session to give you here. I want to set the expectations appropriately. This is going to be probably the most prolific 45 minutes to an hour of your life so far this year. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry. We're going to explore some of the most gut-wrenching topics you could possibly imagine in data analytics and keyword research. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we do, I want to give you a little bit of a story to start out. Once upon a time, there was a shepherd. So there was a shepherd out there who was tending to his flock and noticed down the highway this convertible just flying down the highway, right, kicking up dirt, comes around, screeches to a halt right in front of the shepherd. Guy pops out. He's got a $1,000 suit on. He's got a $1,000 briefcase he's carrying with a $10,000 laptop in it. He walks right up to the shepherd and he says, I'm going to make you a deal. If I can tell you exactly how many sheep you have in your field, will you give me one? And the shepherd says, this is interesting. Don't have a whole lot else going on today. Yeah, I'll take you up on that. So the guy goes back to his car, reaches in the trunk, brings out this huge GPS antenna, attaches it to his expensive laptop, whips out all the technology, starts running all kinds of algorithms, gets the satellites looking at it, and then pops out a report and says, you have 397 sheep. Shepherd says, that's pretty impressive. I guess you win. You can have one of them. So the guy grabs one of the animals. He's got it under his arm. He's walking down the street back to his car. And the shepherd says, hey, hang on. Before you go, let me make you an offer. If I can guess your profession in just one guess, will you give me it back? The guy says, yeah, I'll take you up on that. Without a hesitation, the guy says, you're a consultant. He says, what do you mean? How did you know that? He says, well, 3 things. Number 1, nobody asked you to come here, right? Number two, and this is an important one, right? Number 2, you wanted to charge me to tell me something I already know, right? And number 3, you don't know a damn thing about my business. Now give me back my dog. So now I say that as a founding partner and chief consultant, and I'm going to continue the irony here by talking about holding your vendors accountable as a vendor. And that's kind of the topic we're going to go through here today. So I want to start by just asking you, first of all, to get a feel for folks out here. We saw how many people are sitting in meetings on the SEM and that sort of thing after Peter's presentation. How many of you are actually managing your own AdWords spend or have people internally doing that? Okay, so how many of you are relying on an agency? All right, or a third party? Well, most everybody, right? All right, so let's keep that in mind as we go through this. I want to talk to the biggest thing. You guys have probably all, at least hopefully now, gotten through your 2015 planning. Right? Now, in your 2015 planning, you probably had some business objectives that you want to achieve this year, right? Things like you wanted to increase the average customer value, right? You wanted to drop costs wherever you could. You wanted to do things like get your profit margins up. You wanted to increase customer satisfaction ratings, right? You want more revenue. You want more customers. This all sound pretty familiar, right? These are the business goals we've had for probably 1,000 years, right? Socrates probably had these business goals in his side job, right? Lots of things happening. Now let me ask you this. How many of you in these 2015 planning sessions said, you know what, more than anything else in 2015, what we really, really need to do is we got to get that bounce rate down? Nobody? Now let me ask you a question. The reports you get from your vendors that talk about the SEO, the SEM, the things you're doing, is it not just an Excel sheet with about 4,000 lines talking about things like click-through rates and bounce rates and cost per click and all that? Were any of these things on your 2015 business plans? Right? No, these don't actually speak to your business objectives. Right? So this is one of the big things I want to talk about. And today we're going to cover kind of 3 things. Right? Number 1, I want to get back to real business objectives, which is to say there are some very real business goals you have, and they are supported by some of the things you've seen today in the SEM space and with the technologies that we have out there. Right? We need to generate reports that tell you how you're doing on your business, not how you're doing on your bounce rate. Now, this is an important distinction. We're going to go through this because when you have defined that and gone through that work, you are then able to make meaningful reports. And these meaningful reports will tell you how your business is doing as a result of these objectives, right? Not how many more keywords you were able to do or if you were able to spend all of your budget this month. Right? Those aren't business goals. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on here is that if you free up the time that it takes to do all this manual reporting that you are paying for, Make no mistake about it. You are spending money for someone to sit there and generate all these Excel reports that you probably don't read, right? You can spend that time on things that are very valuable, one of which is keyword research. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that just to kind of dovetail and expand on some of the things you've heard today. So that's our agenda here for the wrap up here. And I want to just kind of go through it one by one. Number one, again, the big thing here we have to do is we have to figure out a way to take your business objectives and then find out how we're going to measure those. And I'm going to offer for you a couple of frameworks to do that. We're going to go through one in detail, but there's lots of them out there, right? If you could tie everything that you're doing with your digital marketing strategy back to something like net income, would that be a good thing for you? Absolutely, right? That's what I want. I want net income at the end of the day. Or, as we've been talking a lot today, the one I'm going to choose to go through here is a customer life cycle. Right? Everybody knows what a customer life cycle is, right? Let's go through it really quickly. What's the first thing we have to do before we get a customer? We've got to make them aware of us, right? We have to attract them, right? And then once we've done that, we're basically just at the very tip of the iceberg, right? So next, what do we have to do with them? We've got to engage with them, absolutely. So we're going to engage with these customers. And at this point, do we have any of their money? No. Have we spent a lot of money? Yeah, right? Now, let's be realistic. What do most people do in the online space at these stages? They leave, right? And they go back and shop somewhere else, right? So this is a tough thing to do. The next step is what a lot of people think of as the last step, and it's not, but it's the conversion, right? Get them to do something I want them to do, whether that's buy something in the retail space, schedule an appointment, log in, do whatever they've got to do as a conversion. That is halfway there. Because what do we have to do after we've converted someone? Retain them, right? It is so much cheaper to retain an existing customer than it is to go out and find a new one. So retention becomes very, very, very important. Now, many of you are thinking, what could possibly be the next step? What's the next step? Convert again? That's retention. How about this one? Make them your best salesperson that you don't have to pay, right? Your advocate. How many of you guys would like to have your customers out there recommending you to their friends, right? Referral business is a huge opportunity here, and you don't have to pay a penny for it. So if you understand that if all of these things are good for your business, right, and I think they are, this is one framework that you can use to then translate all of those metrics and dimensions and all of that analytics speak back to business goals. And I'm going to walk us through that very briefly here with a few. Right, but this is an exercise that you can go through with your agency and that you should go through with your agency so that they can start giving you reports that make sense to you and that come back to the business objectives that you have. So let's talk about this framework, right? We talked about those business objectives that you define in your 2015 planning. Using this framework, I could say, you know what, in the attraction stage, I said, I want to get more people in my door. That was one thing I wanted to do in 2015. I also wanted to have better brand awareness out there. These sound like pretty common goals, right? I want someone to actually go and search for my dealership. Not just a branded Toyota term or worse, an unbranded term, right? On the engagement front, I want two things. I want to provide users everything that they need on a web experience. And I want to get them there quickly. Right? Have you guys ever been to one of those websites that has no internal search? And you go through all those menus and you spend about half an hour trying to find what you want? You don't spend a half an hour. You spend 30 seconds. Then you click the back button and then you go through the other 3.5 billion options you have that Google found in a quarter of a second, right? In this age of decision making, we don't have to do that. And number three, conversion. I want more online scheduling to happen. I want people to not only download, but use more coupons, right? And you'll have a few of these objectives in each one of these. And I won't go through them all, but again, what we've done here is we've just basically slotted these into a framework. Right? Now, once we've done this, we can actually go in and come back and start to see what are the 5, the 10, the 15 metrics that we're going to track and look at that collectively tell me, am I doing a good job or a bad job here? So let's take a look at this attraction stage. What are some of the things that you might want to report on to see if you're doing a good job of attracting more prospects?
How many clicks on your website?
Clicks would be a great one, yeah. Yeah. How many, what other ones would we have? New users. Great, yeah. Somebody who's never heard of me before. That's exactly what I'm after here. Right? So you can find these things. You can find a bunch of them, right? The impressions that you have out there for your top of funnel advertising, right? You've got things like clicks we talked about. How about social follows? People who follow you on Twitter, +1 you, or whatever people do on all the different social networks that are out there. We can track all this stuff, right? Oh, that's my 6-year-old daughter. She knows more about the social media than I do these days. But it's an important thing, right? Website visits at the end of the day is a good one, right? I don't really care where they come from. If it's the SEM space, of course I'm interested in the clicks here. But then when we get to the engagement stage, there's a whole nother set of metrics that I could look at, right? Like, how many people have used certain aspects of my website? There's tons of content out there that we have and that we can put up, right? How many people are using that parts finder? How many people use search and what did they search for? How many people are actually using the scheduling sort of interfaces and are going there, watching my videos? Now, if I said, to you that video you got on your homepage, the views on that went up by 4% this month. Would you say that that's a good thing for your business? How many more dollars would you say is that worth to your business? I don't know. Right? One metric alone doesn't cut it, which is why we want 5, 10, 15, but no more than that. Right? If we pick those things that are most important, if I told you that more people are using those things that are most important, if relevant searches, they're looking at your specials pages, they're interacting with all these things, and every one of these things was going up and to the right, would you say you're doing a pretty good job at engagement? Absolutely. And if they all are falling off the face of the earth, that's where we're going to focus. This is usable information now, right? Usable information. Over on the conversion side, this is the stuff that we focus on, right? I want someone to actually schedule an appointment. I want someone to actually download that coupon, right, with the intent of coming in. But that's a micro conversion that's on the way to revenue. I can figure out how many of those coupons actually get redeemed, and then I can apply that fraction back to the revenue. And I know exactly how much a coupon download is worth, right? Maybe it's worth $3, $4. If I can get that click for $2, let me ask you a question. How much should I be spending on a monthly basis for that click? $2 billion a second, right? Because you just found a money machine. You put in $2 and it spits back out $4, right? Until you hit diminishing returns. These are the things we need to be doing, and that's how you manage SEM. You manage this towards these revenue and profitability metrics. On the retention side, right, we heard a lot of these things. We heard about new visits. How about return visits? Right? How about repeat purchases? All these sorts of things can give you an idea of people. People sign up for your newsletter. These are people who want to continue to do business with you. And if all of these 5, 10, 15 metrics go up and to the right, you're doing a pretty good job in the retention space. And on the advocacy side, this is actually easier than you think. How many people are leaving good reviews? Right? And the number of reviews or the month-over-month increase in reviews over 4 stars, that could be a KPI that you use. Right? All these things you can decide upon, and you can figure out how you're going to measure these business objectives. Because with this framework, we know if we're doing all these things right in the advocacy stage, it's a good thing for our business. It helps us to achieve our business goals, right? Not our cost per click goals. And that's an important distinction. And once you've done all this, it's important also to apply some segments, right? Let me ask you a question. Would it be fair of me to ask someone who has never heard of me before, a new user, who just clicked on that very first ad, to go and tweet to all of their friends how awesome we are and that they should all start using us? Absolutely not. So I would want to segment the new users versus the logged on or known users, right? I'll have different goals and different expectations for them. So these can get more complex, but they don't have to. Right? My point is make sure that these are the kinds of things you're reporting on. Because once you do this, you're able to then put together what are those key performance indicators that tell me if I'm doing a good or bad job. Right? In this case, you might have these. Right? So to measure how I'm doing at attraction, I want the number of visits. I want the number of visits that came in off of branded keyword search terms, which means it had my name in it. That means they already knew who I was. That could also be a retention metric, by the way, because they already knew who you were. And unbranded would be an interesting one. And then you can start to look at other sources. Like, is the overall searches in the world, whether they click on my ads or my rankings or not, are they going up? Right? There are tools out there that can tell you all of these different things between the standard AdWords analytics packages, even things like Google Insights for search, which is now the Google Trends. Lots of tools out there that you have. And again, you can go through all these. People who are downloading your apps, following you on social channels for the first time. If all these things are going up and to the right, you're doing well in the attraction stage. So this is what it comes down to, right? That is the ideal state. This is where most of you are, right? How many of you guys get reports like this from your agencies? All right, once a week. All right, now be real honest. Have you ever read them? I know you haven't, and here's why. Because 7, 8 years ago, after we've been doing this for a couple of years, this is what we were sending out too. We would put your logo up there in the top left. We would download a bunch of data, and we would shove it into an Excel report that was like 70 megabytes large, right? Every piece of detail you could possibly want. I remember early on, one of my new employees came in and said, "Oh, Dave, you're going to fire me, and we're probably going to have to go out of business." I said, "What's going on?" I said, "I just sent the wrong report to the wrong client. Had the big brand up there. It's all the financial data, all that cost data. They're going to sue us. We're done." And I said, "Oh yeah, we're done." I called up my business partner. I said, start putting the estate together, protect all your houses and everything else, because we're getting sued." Right? To this day, I never heard about it. Right? Which means what? Nobody is reading these kinds of reports, right? Absolutely not. So this is an important thing, right? Or if you say, "Okay, this is great, but tell me what it means." And then how many of your agencies will say, "I don't know, why don't you log into Google Analytics and dig around there, see what you can find," right? This is essentially what they're telling you, right? Here's a bunch of stuff. You go figure that out in addition to your day job. Right? That's not reporting, and it's not meaningful, and it's not useful. You deserve better than this because you're paying your agencies a lot of money. Right? You want to make sure that they are providing that value for you. So here's what I propose instead. Right? Instead of this, what I want you to do is then take these frameworks, right? Marry them up with all these business objectives and make meaningful reports that are data visualizations, not just data pukes, right? Just throwing out all that data in an unusable fashion. And these things can literally start on the back of a napkin. You tell me how you want to see these things, and there are tools out there that will visualize them. And here's what's better. They're automated, which means you don't get a monthly report. You get an always report. Anytime you want to see this stuff, log on. It's there. It's live. Right? This is amazing stuff. And for people who see it for the first time, they say, that's exactly what I've been needing this entire time. Right? I have conversations with folks, just very recently. It takes 3 months after asking an agency a simple question like, how much of my money did you spend with Google? Right? 3 months before you get a percentage back, not even a dollar value. That's ridiculous. Right? We need to be understanding all this stuff. Let me show you how this works for the folks here who don't really care what a click-through rate is. Right? And how many people here don't care what bounce rate or click-through rate is? Right? Most of you, probably. And in that case, a report like this might be more meaningful. Right? This dashboard that basically says, all right, you defined 5 KPIs for each one of these that fits into your business goals. These are going up if they're green. They're going down if they're red. And if there's no change, they're orange. Now, anybody who didn't know that Google was a company before you came in here today can still interpret these results, right? Where am I spending my money and my time next? I don't really have a lot of problem in the retention stage, so I'm not going to be spending a lot of my time on client retention programs. Right? Where am I going to spend my time? Well, in the advocacy stage, people don't like me, right? I'm having a problem here. I'm having a problem here getting more people. Once I get them, I'm doing an okay job in the engagement and conversion. So with 24 hours in my day, right, I know exactly where to focus my time. And if I want to understand more why, well, in the advocacy stage, this KPI is actually doing pretty well. What are we doing there that we're not doing in these others? Right? If I want to figure that out, what do? I drill down. And then I drill down, I have a tab here for more details about every single one of those things. Right? And this is a very, very intuitive report. Does anybody have a report that looks like this? Right? This is a very different approach. Right? It's a very different way of looking at it. And you'll notice that there's not a whole lot of talk about click-through rates by a keyword level and average position and cost per click, because those things aren't important. It's the business things that are important. Right? Now this is important. This is kind of a mock-up here to show you how simple it can be. I want to show you a real example of one of my favorite clients that we work with. This is a business owner. And the business owner, when we built out this particular visualization, said, these are the things that are important to me. This is all I care about. So we put it on a dashboard, we loaded it up on an iPad, we presented the iPad, and he promptly duct taped it to his hand and walks around all day long, every day, looking at these real-time stats. Now he loves it. His staff hates it, right? Because on days like this, where everything is red, guess what? People are going to get yelled at, right? And when everything is green, people get a free lunch, right? This is a fantastic way for someone to see the health of their business at precisely the level they need to. Right? Now this doesn't mean that you need to ignore all of the detail, right? Because the detail is important. And I'm going to go a little faster through this part because I realize not anybody in here is actually managing the accounts. But you do need to know that your agencies who are should be looking at the data in this level of detail, right? If I actually drilled into that conversion tab, for example, I have all of these visualizations here that tell me exactly what's going on. These are interactive. Right? I can use these sliders here to play with the dates. I have all kinds of visualizations that are much more intuitive than rows and rows of data to understand the impact on my data. I can even use these things to drop down and say, it's interesting to look at the parts orders, but I also want to see dealer contacts. How many of those things happened? When I do this, this updates in a flash. I update the dates. I can see month on month, year on year, week on week, day on day performance increases, and I know exactly what's happening. Right? And if I find something that's red or pink that needs some attention, I drill into that, and I can go even further. And then I can start to look here at the exact campaigns that are being run, the cost per conversion that I expect. This is financial data now, right? How much money am I getting? If it's green, it's good. If it's red, it's bad. I can identify the campaigns, the ad groups, the keywords, all of that level of minutia. This is what your agencies should be doing, right? But many of them aren't, because they're spending all their time creating Excel spreadsheets that you'll never look at. Right? And this is where you have a tremendous opportunity to get a big jump ahead here. Because just little steps in this direction can really help align your goals and get you to a place where your vendors are now spending more of the time doing the valuable things and less of the time doing the things that are not quite as valuable. Right? So That's kind of where we want to go with this, right? And in order to do this, there's some things that you have to have. First of all, you need to own your own accounts. Now, let me do a quick show of hands here. How many of you guys are doing AdWords? You're spending money with Google right now. Okay. Of all those folks, how many of you own your own accounts? 2, 3. So everybody else, that means the agency says, we're going to buy on your behalf, and we'll just send you a report, and we'll tell you how we're doing, right? That's kind of like, now I wish this was the case, right? Back in high school, sitting down there, taking a test, and then handing it to the teacher, and the teacher says, you know what, just tell me how you think you did. I think I probably got like an A-, right? Because if I said A+, you'd probably take a look at it, right? This is what's happening, right? People who don't own their own accounts have no visibility. You're letting your agencies grade their own homework, right? And guess what? They're never going to get less than an A-. And this is an important thing for us to understand because this industry has been around for not very long. It hasn't matured that much, so there's still a lot of that going on out there. Second thing that I think is important is to understand where all of your data is stored. So you should never, ever be spending a penny with Google or anywhere else for that matter without analytics. Friends don't let friends spend money on AdWords without analytics. How many of you have an analytics account with Google? Google Analytics. Anybody have an Adobe Analytics account or IBM or anything else? Okay. So good. For those of you who do, that's fantastic. How many of you own that? Good. And a few of you don't. That means that you get to log in. You probably have the access to just exactly what they want you to look at. And they've probably got 15 of your competitors under the same account. Right? That means that if you don't like them, they don't like you at some point, you start over. That data is not yours. Check your contracts. Because if you don't own the data, you can't do any of this stuff. Right? And this is an important thing. That data in 2015 is an asset. Right? Treat that like an asset because that's exactly what it is. Do not let someone else take that away from you. Right? And we've gone through lawsuits with even the largest media buyers out there who have hidden this because they do not want to see the markups that they have. They don't want to see all the, they don't want transparency. They want the old model, the insertion model, right? I'm going to get paid to place your media. You're going to spend $10,000 with me. I don't ever tell you how much I get charged by the networks to place it or anything like that. Right? It's the old model, and it worked for a long, long time, which is why I played a lot of golf and drank a lot of expensive whiskey, right? There's money in that. So this is a new era, right? And this is the thing we've got to start to think about. So you are paying for time. Whether you have an agency and you're paying for their time or whether you do this internally with your folks, do not pay for someone to do this, right? Sit down at the keyboard and start downloading reports and merging cells in Excel all day. That is not valuable. Instead, we want to do important, fun, exciting things, right? There's lots of important, fun, and exciting things that you've heard about today, right? Think about everything that you saw from Peter's presentation. Right? How many people are doing retargeting campaigns right now? Video. Anybody on display? Anybody doing programmatic buying? Right? All these things. Anybody doing actual analysis, like data analysis on placement targeting? All these other things, right? Very few. This is where that time should be spent because this is where you can see significant ROI and you can measure it against those business goals. So I'm going to focus on just one here, right? Keyword research, because I think it's important. Even if you're not doing it, you need to understand this so that you can hold your vendors' feet to the fire. Ask them the last time they've done formal keyword research, then ask them to see it. Right? This is an important thing because a lot of folks will just set up a campaign and then they'll let it run. You'll continue to spend a monthly bill and then you'll continue to get that report. And a year later, you'll be in the same position. And guess what? Nobody's touched that account in a year. They just let it run and they collected the fee. Right? This is the sort of thing that happens and it's something to watch out for. So 3 things. Number 1, make sure that they are doing this. And make sure you're able to see it and make sure that you're involved in it because no one knows your business better than you. Nobody. Right? Second thing that's important here is do not try to do this by having someone stand there in front of a computer and do a couple of Google searches and start writing down everything that they see. Right? There's automation here. There are tools out there. There is no excuse not to use tools. And there's one that's a free one that I'm going to show you and go through an example with as well. The second thing is when you are evaluating a keyword, you want to make sure it's being evaluated against 3 things. Number 1, how many times is it being typed in? Number 2, how relevant is it to your business? And number 3, how competitive is that term? Right? These 3 things are going to be really all that matters before you start buying it. So let's go through a quick example here. Let's say, I'll give you a real example, right? My wife, her Prius, I walked out to the garage once and I noticed that she had tires on that I'm not kidding, these things were smoother than like Marvin Gaye at his peak, right? They needed a change, right? So I said, you know, honey, we gotta get these new tires, right? So what did I do? Right? In today's age, what did I do? How many people think that I got in the car, I started driving from every possible place I could get my tires and just starting asking for quotes? Anybody think I did that? No. What did I do? I went to Google, and what did I type in? This is important, right? What did I type in?
Prius tires.
Yeah, so probably something along those lines. How many of you think I went in there and I said, you know what? I got to find some tires for my 2013 Prius. I'm going to go and type in car. Anybody? No? Why not? It's not relevant, right? How many of your agencies are spending half your budget on a broad match of the keyword car? Take a look, right? It's alarming. By the way, since everybody's doing it, do you think that's a competitive term? Absolutely. How about even the term car tires, right? Let's think about this, car tires. Right, what is Toyota market share in the US? Right around 15%, right? So by definition, 85 out of every 100 impressions you're paying your agency to put out there are completely wasted. 85%. Because this is a bad keyword. Right? But let's go through this, right? And this is a tool called the Google Keyword Planner. You have access to an AdWords account even if you're not using AdWords. Just go sign up. You don't ever have to spend a dime, and you will get access to this tool. Right? You go in there, you go to the Tools area, you click on Keyword Planner, it brings up a nice little interface like this. You think to yourself, yeah, I don't know, let's see what's out there, and let's type in the keyword car tires. And there's a bunch of refinements you can put in place, like geographical, figure out who's in your area, all that good stuff. And when you go ahead and do this, you will find with the click of a button that Google has found 800 different variations and suggestions on that particular keyword seed that you should be looking at. And not only that, they gave you all the data you need to examine those three things. This is pretty amazing, right? This is pretty simplistic. Now let's take a look at this, right? So I found these 800 keywords, and if I do this a few times with a few different variations, I keep getting these. Suddenly I've got tens or hundreds of thousands of keywords. And at that point, I just dump them all into a big Excel CSV. I use sorts and filters inside of Excel, and I can start to figure out what are some good keywords and what are some bad ones, right? Very quickly. So keyword research does not mean you have to have a PhD. Right? This is some very simple things that we can use, these tools out there that are very intuitive. Right, now let's take a look at this. So let's say that I did this. I said, you know what, I'm interested in that car tires keyword. I'm thinking about buying it here. I see that it gets a lot of average monthly searches, right? So volume's pretty good. Right, what do you guys think about relevance here? Why do I have that low? Well, we mentioned, first of all, 85% of them are irrelevant. Yeah, exactly. So what else? Like, let's think about some things like accidental competition. Right? What if there was someone who was in academia who was doing some research on automobile fatigue? Think about that for a sec. All right? How tired do cars get? Cars tire out, right? That's probably a stretch. But let me give you another example. Number one, the worst possible job in the world would be to buy keywords for the Hilton Hotel in Paris, France. Right? Anybody know why? Yeah, you gotta compete with this, right? This is impossible, right? So you've got so much competition on this. You've got words like scandal and cell phone rings and pics and images and blah, 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 and much worse that I can't say in a public forum, right? But those sorts of things happen all the time. So think about the name of your dealership, for example. How many restaurants in the west half of Mexico probably share the same name, right? Right? And then start to think about this from a really global audience. You could have competition with people who have no business competing with you in a local specific business market, right? This happens. It's the online world. It's very different. Right? So think about that. And in this case, I would argue car tires is not relevant at all. I would tremendously argue the value of having your agencies buy that word for you. Right? And I would want to look at the data to make sure that the 15% that are relevant are getting enough clicks and there are enough conversions on that that it's actually profitable for you. And if it is profitable, spend $1 billion a second on it. Right? But if not, stop buying this. Right? Stop wasting your budgets on this one. So what else? I heard it, right? Somebody said Prius tires. Yeah, absolutely. That's a little bit more relevant. So let's take a look at this. Those actually showed up in this. By the way, $4 a click, over $4 a click for this, right? How many clicks on that do you think you need to sell some tires? What's the profit margin on that? Right? You can very quickly see it. This is going to be a hard one to make profit. Right? So let's take a look at this one here. Prius tire size. Right, anybody think of that one? What is the intent of someone who goes onto a website, a Google, and says Prius tire size? Or even more specifically, Toyota Prius tire size or 2010 Toyota Prius tire size? What are they looking to do real fast? Get some tires, right? How many of you guys would have thought of that before right now? How many think your competitors would have thought of that before right now? Go home and buy this, right? Because here's the thing. It is not very competitive, right? You can get this for roughly half the price. Half the price. And by the way, we call this the dum-dum bid, right? Because if you're doing the right things right, you have better quality scores than everyone else. Your agencies are building up historical, so you basically pay a fraction of that, right? This is just a recommended competitive metric for you to look at. Right? This is important stuff to be looking at, right? Now, you may look at the volume and say, well, that's great, but there's only 110 people looking at that every single month, right? I don't want that. But what if you did this? Right? What if you added up 110 50 times? Is that a considered amount of traffic, potentially? Absolutely. This is known as the long tail. Whenever anybody's talking about the long tail, this is what they mean. You get a whole bunch of less competitive but much more relevant terms that are much higher likelihood of conversion, too. Think about that, right? This is an important thing for you to think about. So your agency can build out a campaign like this using tools like AdWords Editor or any automation that they've got in minutes. Right? Build out these potential ad groups. Assign some budget, play out with this thing. And by the way, it's not just Prius. There's every other model that you've got out there too. So by the time you're done with every model year and every one of these little long tails that you found, you could potentially have tens of thousands of very profitable keywords that all collectively are making you a lot of money, right? And how hard is it to use Excel, to use some of the formulas, to automate these sorts of things, and then create a couple ads? And a few things about the ads. We've worked with a lot of dealerships, Toyota dealerships over the years. There's a few things you want to think about, right? Number one, you cannot have an irrelevant message. Right? We've heard this time and time again today. Somebody who types in 2006 Prius tire size, don't try to sell them a brand new Camry, no matter how good the financing is, right? That's not what they want, right? And even worse, when they click on this, send them to a relevant place. Right? In this case, we've made up this little tire size finder, right? And that can be completely fictitious, and your agency should know that. And they should be sending them to what page? The tires page that, what, 2/3 of people don't have, right? So again, your agency should be telling you, get a tires page so I can start sending this traffic there, right? And these are all things that you need to be spending your time on. You can't spend your time on this if you're paying them a fixed fee or a percentage of spend, and they're spending all that time and all that money on building Excel reports you never look at. That's the point here. So again, some interesting things here. And once you've done this, this is what I want to tell you. Keyword research is all predictive. Right? This is basically saying, I don't know yet. I'm going to use all the data that I have to make an informed decision. Then I'm going to buy some keywords, but I don't know if they're going to work for me until I actually do it. And when I do it, I better have some reports, right? And again, before I get to that, you're going to have this deck, so I just want to slide through it. But these were the top terms for the fixed ops area of Toyota over the years that Peter provided for us, right, for 2014. Use these not to just go in there and tell your agency to start bidding on them. Use these as seeds for them to do some keyword research and ask them why they're going to start bidding on them. Because it's got a good blend of volume, relevance, and the competition is favorable. Right? Those are the things you need to see. So a few slides here. These are meant mostly for the takeaway. You'll get a PDF of this. These are the ones that you want to be taking a look at. But this is what I want to focus on, right? This is that report I showed you before. You as a business owner or a P&L owner or a manager, you don't need this level of detail, but you better make sure your agency's looking at it, right? Because here it is. Out of all those ones we just put in that sample ad group, we spent a little bit of money on it, and we can figure out very quickly that it looks like the earlier model years are not profitable for us, not at all. Right? But these later model years, getting us what we need. Now, what do? This is a pretty easy optimization. Yes, stop the red ones and keep the green ones and spend more money there, right? It's not rocket science. Right? And this is what's called optimization. Now, when do you stop doing this? Never. Never. Well, no, that's not true. If you get to a point where you have click-through rates of 100% with conversion rates of 100% and infinite ROI, you have my permission to stop. And then send me your resume, because I'd love to know how you did it, right? But if not, and even if you did that, right, the competition is changing every day. The world around us is changing every day. So this is what people mean by ongoing optimization. Okay, so last couple things here that I want to give are just a few, next steps for everybody. Number one, there's help out there, right? So for the folks out here who said I lost you at slide 1.5, right? That's okay. There's a whole lot to learn out here, and there is support available, right? The Toyota team has plenty of air coverage here to give lots of support in this space. If you want a little bit more, I'm going to give you guys all this free little discount code, and if you wanted to see me for another roughly 18 hours on a scripted stage, you can do that through lynda.com. It's online training videos, lots and lots of it there, broken up into like 5-minute chunks throughout these courses. The courses that are out there that I'd recommend you take a look at are AdWords, Advanced AdWords, Analytics on both the Google and the Adobe side. Not because you're going to do this yourself, but so that you can have the knowledge to hold your agencies accountable. Right? That you know how to talk the talk, that you know how to have those conversations. The next thing that you can do is you can start to look at your partners. Right? One quick thing to look at. First of all, there's a Google Partner certification out there. Right? Make sure that whatever agency is buying AdWords for you has that partnership. And what I would recommend on top of that, because that's a fairly easy badge to get, is make sure that they not only have that badge, but they also have an analytics badge. Whether it's Adobe, IBM, or Google, doesn't matter. This tells you they use data to drive the approach to SEM. Right? And I think this is an important thing. There's also training agencies out there. My firm runs the entire global training program for the Google Partners Agency. So anybody who has that badge has been trained by our firm on how to do this in the right way. It doesn't mean they do it in the right way. It means that they've received the training. But I think it's an important thing for you to know, that there are certifications out there. There are things you can look for, and you can look at these things as a differentiator. So, key next steps. A few things, right? Number one, search is working. Right? Does anybody think that the internet is almost done with its passing fad days? No? I guess I'm alone. I'm alone in that. No, it's here, right? And here's the other thing. We're sitting in a pretty nice room, right? We had premium. We had Pete's Coffee here. This wasn't like the Folger stuff. Google's doing okay if they can afford some Pete's Coffee for us, right? Google's doing $15 billion plus a quarter on this, and it's not because it doesn't work, right? This works. Right? And a lot of folks, imagine if you're happy now, or you were happy coming into this presentation at least with the return you're getting, imagine what you could be doing if you're doing all these things right. Tremendous returns are available to you in this. So start using search if you're not. Second thing is make sure you own that data. If you do not own your account, get on the phone. Literally, as soon as this is over, I expect to see you in the hallway making a cell phone call to your agency and say, give me my own account now. Right? That's how urgent this is. Maybe you can wait until you're on the drive home, right? But still, it's an important thing. You have to have this for any of this to work. Number three, reporting. If you're getting that Excel dump every single week, tell them to stop sending it to you and start sending you something that matters, that reflects your business, right? Go through this exercise. This is a process, and it's a project. And number four, again, this will free up time for you and your vendors to become partners, right? Not just an agency and that client relationship, but to become true partners here, to spend the time on the things that matter. The keyword research, right? Things like targeting research. You saw how easily you can target things like someone who's looking for a DIY video. You can serve them up a display ad that says, this is exactly the service that you want. Here's the price. And come on in and get it, because it's really complex out there, right? And even after that, one of the best things you can do is you can retarget people, right? And for those who don't know what retargeting is, have you guys ever put something in a shopping cart and had the audacity to not buy it? Right? You get that red sweater, you put it in there, and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to buy it, right? What happens? You are then chased around the internet for the rest of your natural-born life with an ad for that red sweater, right? First time it's 10% off, and then a day later it's 20% off, and by the time you're a week into it, they're willing to pay you $10 to take the sweater, right? These are and eventually you just buy the sweater to get the ads to stop, right? Which is why it actually works. But these are the things that happen. And there's intelligent ways to do this too, because the worst thing that could happen is you actually buy the sweater, and after you've bought it, you get a 20% off coupon, right? Then you're angry, and you never go back there. But there's intelligent ways, right? What are some recurring services that you might be thinking of right now? Oil change, right? Why not set up a remarketing list that after that intent period, it automatically starts up again 6 months from now, right? Or longer if it's a synthetic or anything else, right? You can start to actually use these so that every time it's time for something, they start seeing ads everywhere they go. Right? They go to CNN to check the news. There's the ad. They go check out a recipe on a food site. There's the ad, right? Chase them around until they finally get an oil change from you to stop the ad, right? It works. Lots of things that you can do here. And your agencies have time to build and plan those campaigns. Next one is display and video, right? I wrote a 600-page book on display. The day that it shipped, it was already 3 months out of date, right? This is how fast this is changing. And again, it was alluded to kind of at the end of the time it was sped through a little bit. It's important. Have the right objectives, right? It's upper funnel marketing. This is awareness. This is attraction, right? This is getting people to know who you are. They're not going to click on it and then buy a car, right? Has anybody ever done that? Clicked on an ad and then bought a car online? No? Nobody's ever put like a Lexus on your PayPal? No? You want to know an interesting stat? 3 to 4 Ferraris are purchased on eBay from a mobile device every month. Can you imagine that? Just shopping around for a Ferrari while you're on the train, you know? Yeah, they're all in the parking lot, right? Well, here's the thing, right? Yeah, those are all Teslas. Ferraris are way too ungoogly, right? Yeah, it's an important thing, but it's a crazy stat. So think about that. Everybody in this room starts doing these things, and we can all start adding to that statistic and buying Ferraris or you know, whatever cars we want on our iPhones. And then the last thing here is just don't forget to do this in an ongoing fashion, right? This never stops. The environment around you is always changing. Make sure that you have a valuable partnership that's doing the right things right for you time and time again. So with that, I think we've gained back a little bit of time here, so hopefully we are back on track. I want to say again, thanks for the opportunity. It's been great. Thanks.